A big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. For a limited time, you can go to nordvpn.com/censoredgaming and get a huge discount and an extra 4 months completely free. I have used Nord for many years, and it's great to be able to access content from other regions at a click of a button. Nord has over 5,000 servers, fast speeds, and exclusive smart play tech, which further improves access. Using Nord also keeps your internet's activity and data safe and private, with Nord's next generation encryption and audited no data logging policy. So go to nordvpn.com/censoredgaming or via the link in the description and get a huge discount and 4 months free, with a 30-day money back guarantee. In 2018, Sony introduced stricter content policies for games released on its systems. This has meant that when games are submitted for QA prior to release, there have been numerous cases of games being rejected due to content deemed objectionable. This has then either led to changes having to be made to game content, or even releases on Sony systems being completely cancelled. And this is a worldwide policy, meaning it has affected all regions around the world, including Japanese versions of games. The new direction has mainly targeted risque content and games developed by Japanese developers. However, we have also at times seen other content, such as violence, as well as some Western developed games also being affected. And so in this video, we'll be compiling a list of 26 games censored on Sony systems. Although just to point out that we can't be sure in every instance that the censorship was the result of forced changes by the platform holder. Although in many instances we have statements that this was the case from those involved. And so first up is one of the most recent games affected, which is Doki Doki Literature Club Plus. The developers published a blog post in June that explains that a scene had to be changed due to platform regulations on PlayStation, while it remains uncensored on Xbox, Switch, and PC. And this scene is one of the examples of violence being affected, with it involving the blood colour being changed from red to black. Next is Amiga Labyrinth Z, the second game in the Amiga Labyrinth series. In June 2018, P-Cube announced that the Western release had to be cancelled due to Sony rejecting the game. And this is despite the game already being fully localized and ready to go. But that won't be the last time for the franchise. The next game in the series, 2019's Amiga Labyrinth Life, had to have many changes to risque content on PlayStation 4, but not on Switch or PC. And this time, the Japanese release was also affected due to it being a new release following Sony's content policy changes. To avoid any potential confusion, the publishers also decided to change the name on PlayStation, with it being called simply Labyrinth Life instead. And this also removed the innuendo that the Amiga symbol has in its name. Another game affected is Senran Kagura Burst Renewal, with Xseed announcing in October 2018 that the game had to be delayed due to needing to remove the risque intimacy mode from the PlayStation 4 version of the game. The Steam release, however, kept the intimacy mode in the game, with it launching simultaneously with the PS4 release. Another Senran Kagura game that has run into issues is the next mainline entry in the series, Senran Kagura 7. While initially announced in 2017, not much was heard from the title following the announcement. The series creator, Kenichiro Takaki, would later in 2019 explain that creating the game is currently impossible due to Sony's content restrictions. Takaki would then go on to leave his position and join Sai Games, and nothing has been heard about the game ever since. Next is Terminator Resistance, which is reportedly an example of not just Sony objecting to game content, but also Microsoft. Over on the Steam forums, players discovered that there was an alternate version of the game's romance scenes left in the game's files. The alternate versions are more raunchy in nature, with wider camera angles that allow you to see topless nudity. But in a now deleted tweet, the developers have said that they were forced to tone down these scenes by Sony and Microsoft, and this is despite the game's M rating. The next game is kind of an outliner, but it was felt as worth mentioning anyway, and that is Devil May Cry 5. When the game was released in 2019, players discovered a strange change that had been made to only the PlayStation version of the game, and only in North America and Europe, meaning Japan was curiously not affected. The change involves a cutscene with Trish at the end of Mission 11, where instead of being nude, her body will be covered up with a lens flare effect. Neither Capcom nor Sony would comment on this, but then even more strange is that patch 107 would then remove the lens flare flare in the North American version, while European copies have kept the lens flare ever since. The lens flare is absent in all versions for Xbox and PC. And then when it came time for the special edition release in 2020, the European PlayStation 5 copies have Trish covered up with the lens flare yet again, while it remains without the lens flare in North America and Japan, and for all regions on Xbox Series and PC. Next is Super Neptunia RPG, where in 2019, Idea Factory International made a statement that the PS4 release will have to have 2 slightly modified CGs. On Switch and PC, however, the CGs remain uncut. Hentai vs. Evil is another example of the differences between modern Nintendo and Sony. The game isn't named Hentai vs. Evil for no reason, but when the game was released on PlayStation and Switch earlier in 2021, despite both versions being rated mature, only the Switch release contains an uncensored mode where the characters will be fully topless during gameplay. Some other games from 2021 are multiple games from the publisher Gamazumi, who have been releasing a variety of visual novel titles on consoles. For Sable's Grimoire, the publishers have displayed a note on the PlayStation Store page reading 2 images have been removed and others have been censored. Meanwhile, the Xbox and Switch versions are uncut. Another game from them, however, Beach Bounce Remastered, was completely blocked from releasing on PlayStation. Nintendo, though, once again allowed the game to be released. Dragonstar Veneer's Nintendo Switch release also came earlier in August of this year, and unlike 2019's PlayStation 4 release, the Switch version is 100% uncut. Meanwhile, on PS4, 2 scenes had to be modified due to suggestive imagery. The Dead or Alive Extreme series has also run into issues on PlayStation. While Dead or Alive Extreme 3 originally came before Sony's policy changes, the updated release Dead or Alive Extreme 3 Scarlet came following the tougher restrictions being introduced. This means that there's a variety of missing risque features for the PlayStation version, but not on the Nintendo Switch. The entire Nekapara series is also censored on PlayStation compared to the Switch versions, with the most recent release being Nekapara Volume 4 in December 2020. In the games is a chest-bound setting in the menus that is absent on PlayStation. For Volume 1, the developers sneakily kept it in the PlayStation version with it being hidden on the menu, but you could still select it if you scrolled down. However, this would then be removed with patch 102, and never included at all in any of the later volumes on PlayStation, while it has been included with every Switch version. Volume 1 of the game also modified scenes on PlayStation compared to Switch to reduce suggestive imagery. Okana for Rhythm Across the Blue was supposed to release on PlayStation 4 alongside its Nintendo Switch release. However, following P-Cube announcing in June 2020 that changes had to be made to images and text for the PS4 version, the PS4 version has so far never been released. And with the Switch version releasing in August 2020, it appears that the PS4 version may no longer be released. 2020's Death End Request 2 made numerous changes to outfits compared to the previous game in the series, with this being thought to be due to Sony. The game will later be released on PC, and for the PC release of the game, a poll was opened up about the changed designs, which asked fans whether the PC version should feature the skimpier designs from the first game or the covered up versions from the PlayStation version of the sequel, and the poll concluded with the majority of fans asking for the original designs. On July 4th, 2019, Spike Chunsoft revealed that changes will be made to the PlayStation versions of Crystar and Conception Plus. On the same day, 2 separate blog posts were made, with one for Crystar saying that half a second of footage from the pre-title cinematic which depicted a character's buttocks has been removed, and that no other content but this half a second was altered, and that the Steam release will not have this change. The changes to Conception Plus were more extensive, however. For Conception Plus, it was announced that during the classmating rituals, the Star Maiden's 3D models would appear as blue and purple rather than flesh colours. Again, however, it was clarified that this would only be for the PlayStation version and it will be uncut on PC. Another Idea Factory game that has run into trouble was 2019's Date A Live Rio Reincarnation. Here, not only was the game affected, but also the in-game digital art books. Idea Factory explained on their website that 4 pages from the art books would not be included in the PlayStation 4 version, and 1 page will feature one of the 2 modified CGs. While the PS4 version has to modify CGs and changes to the art books, Idea Factory clarified that the Steam version would instead feature all of the original art. But now for some Japan exclusive games that have run into issues. First up is 2020's Love or Kiss, which is a dating sim that had to have a range of modifications to be able to release on PlayStation, unlike the Switch version. And these modifications include decreased chess physics and altering character designs. Then there's the 2019 visual novel Haru Oto Alice Graham Snowdrop, which had to be delayed due to what was described as production circumstances. But it's widely speculated that the delay was due to needing to alter the game's artwork. And compared to the PC version, a variety of scenes were modified for the PS4 release to tone down suggestive art. The 2019 visual novel Raspberry Cube also had modified artwork on PlayStation 4, and this led to the game being given a low rating on PS4 compared to Switch, with it being rated Zero C on PS4, which is 15 years and over, and Zero D on Switch, which is 17 years and over. But then lastly is Nora Princess and Stray Cat Heart, which was one of the first games to be affected by the change in policy, and also started a bit of a meme amongst gamers due to the way the censorship was handled. The 2018 visual novel features huge light beams over suggestive artwork for the PlayStation 4 release. Meanwhile, the Switch and PC versions are uncut, as is the Vita version, which came out in 2017 before the policy changes. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and a big thanks once again to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. Until next time, thank you for watching.